When you reach that moment where everything feels too heavy to carry, when your ambitions, responsibilities, and even your desires lose their color, something profound is unfolding beneath the surface. It feels like collapse, but in truth, it's a kind of awakening. The exhaustion that takes hold of you isn't just physical or mental, it's spiritual. You're not merely tired of doing things. You're tired of being the version of yourself that was always trying to hold the world together. And that, though it feels like defeat, is the first sign that something within you has begun to stir. For most of our lives, we run on borrowed purpose. We inherit ideas of success, happiness, and meaning from society, family, and culture, and we chase them as if our worth depends on it. But no matter how far we go or how much we achieve, there's always that quiet whisper asking, "Is this all?" At first, we ignore it, drowning it out with distractions and endless activity. Yet over time, the noise no longer satisfies. The goals that once excited us begin to feel hollow, the roles we play start to weigh on us, and the game of life that once seemed thrilling begins to lose its shine. This is not failure. It is awakening from a long dream. The tiredness you feel isn't because you've done too little. It's because you've done too much of what isn't truly you. You've been performing, pretending, striving, trying to live up to an image that never belonged to you in the first place. When the soul becomes wary of pretending, the body follows. Life begins to slow you down, not as punishment, but as mercy. It's as if existence itself is saying, "You've wandered long enough. Sit down for a moment. Look around. Remember who you are." In that moment of fatigue, everything you once clung to starts to dissolve. The need to impress, the hunger to win, the fear of missing out. It's uncomfortable because you're shedding old skin. The identity that was built on doing, proving, and achieving begins to crumble, and the space beneath it feels empty at first. But that emptiness is not a void, it's an opening. It's the first breath of freedom after a long suffocation. You might think you're breaking down, but what's truly happening is a breaking open. You are starting to see through the layers of illusion that kept you trapped in a cycle of becoming. You are realizing that no amount of accomplishment, approval, or control could ever give you what you've been looking for. Because what you've been seeking was never missing. The exhaustion strips away the unnecessary so that you can finally touch the truth that's always been there, that peace isn't earned, it's remembered. So when you find yourself tired of everything, don't rush to fix it, don't numb it, let it be. Let yourself sink into that weariness fully, without resistance. It's life's way of slowing you down just enough for you to notice the stillness underneath it all. The stillness that is not tired, that has never struggled, that quietly watches as you wake up to what you've always been. There is a deep weariness that comes from chasing after things that never truly satisfy. From the moment we are old enough to understand words, we are told that life is about pursuit of success, recognition, love, enlightenment, and some imagined state of permanent happiness. The world teaches us that peace is a destination, and that we must work endlessly to reach it. And so we run, believing that if we just keep moving, if we just achieve one more goal, if we just become a slightly better version of ourselves, then the unease within us will finally fade. But it never does, because we are chasing a horizon that keeps retreating as we move toward it. Every time you reach what you thought would bring contentment, there's a quiet disappointment waiting underneath the celebration. You get what you wanted, yet something inside whispers, "Is that all?" It's a haunting truth that no matter how much you achieve or acquire, the satisfaction is temporary. The moment fades and the hunger returns. This endless cycle of striving is not living, it's running on a treadmill that goes nowhere. The exhaustion that follows isn't from effort alone, but from the illusion that effort will ever deliver the peace you seek. We chase because we've forgotten that we already are what we're looking for. The more we run, the further we drift from ourselves. You can see this clearly when you pause long enough to watch your own mind. How it leaps from one desire to another, one fear to the next, never still, never content. The illusion of constant pursuit is that you're moving towards something meaningful. But in truth, you're just orbiting the same emptiness you've been avoiding all along. And the exhaustion you feel is the body's natural protest against this madness of endless becoming. When you're trapped in this cycle, even rest feels guilty. You can't sit still without the nagging thought that you should be doing something. You've been conditioned to measure your worth by progress, So doing nothing feels like failure. Yet, the very act of stopping, of not chasing, is the doorway to peace. Life has never demanded your effort to be complete, it has only ever asked for your presence. The trees grow, the rivers flow, the seasons change, none of them are striving, and yet everything unfolds perfectly. The moment you stop running, a strange thing happens. The mind panics at first, searching for its next target, but soon, there's nothing left to chase. And in that stillness, a quiet recognition arises, the things you were pursuing were never outside of you. You were never chasing peace, you were running from silence. You were never chasing happiness, you were escaping stillness. You were never chasing meaning, you were avoiding the emptiness that would have revealed it. When the illusion of pursuit dissolves, what remains is a deep exhale. The realization that there was never anywhere to go. The chase was only ever a dream, and you were already home long before you started running. When you finally grow weary of chasing, there comes a quiet moment, one that doesn't announce itself with fireworks or revelation, but with a simple stillness. You sit down, perhaps without intending to, and something inside whispers, enough. It's in that pause, when the noise of striving fades and the endless motion of thought begins to slow, that truth starts to reveal itself. Not the kind of truth you can read in a book or hear in a lecture, but the kind that has been quietly waiting behind every experience of your life, unnoticed while you were too busy reaching for something else. Stillness doesn't need your effort, it only needs your surrender. It's not something you create, it's something that has always been there, beneath the surface of all you're doing and becoming. Like a pond disturbed by constant ripples, the mind has been restless for so long that you've forgotten what clear reflection looks like. Yet when you stop stirring the waters with endless thoughts and desires, the surface settles on its own. And in that calmness you can finally see. You see that peace was never hiding, it was simply obscured by the waves of your own mind. In stillness, you begin to understand that the world isn't as chaotic as it once seemed. It was only your interpretation that made it so. The noise wasn't coming from outside, it was your mind echoing against itself, trying to solve problems it had invented. When you stop feeding those thoughts, when you no longer chase meaning, but allow life to simply be, you discover a quiet clarity that doesn't need explanation. Everything appears softer, more alive, and strangely perfect, not because the world has changed, but because you are finally seeing it without distortion. This stillness is not the absence of life, but the essence of it. It's not a dull emptiness, but a vibrant presence that watches without judgment. From it, you realize that you are not the thinker of thoughts, not the door of actions, but the awareness in which they appear. You are not the storm, you are the sky that holds it. Every sound, every feeling, every movement happens within you, like clouds passing through open space. When you see this clearly, the sense of struggle dissolves. There's no longer something to attain, no self to perfect, no future to conquer, only the simple miracle of being here now. Stillness reveals that peace was never lost, only overlooked. It shows you that what you've been seeking in movement can only be found in rest. It's not a withdrawal from life, but a deeper participation in it. Seeing, hearing, and feeling everything with fresh awareness, free of the filters of desire and fear. And as you rest in that awareness, you realize the truth, the silence you once feared is not your enemy. It's the home you've been trying to return to all along. We are taught from the very beginning that life is something to figure out, something to master, something to win. From childhood, we're told to plan, to achieve, to strive for purpose. And so, we grow into adults, constantly measuring ourselves against invisible standards, always searching for the next goal, the next breakthrough, the next reason to keep running. But after enough years of chasing, something in us begins to crack. The weight of constant striving becomes too heavy, and suddenly, the question arises, what if life was never meant to be conquered? What if it was only meant to be lived, experienced, danced with? The exhaustion that leads to awakening often comes from treating life like a problem to solve rather than a mystery to embrace. We analyze, we predict, we try to control the rhythm. But the music of existence was never meant to be confined by our logic. It flows with its own tempo, sometimes gentle, sometimes wild, but always alive. And when you stop trying to conduct it and begin to listen, you notice something profound. The rhythm has always been perfect. The only disharmony was your resistance to it. You don't have to know the steps to dance. You don't need to plan every move or predict the next beat. The dance is about surrender, allowing yourself to be moved by something larger than your mind. When you let go of trying to live life correctly, life begins to live through you. You start to notice the beauty hidden in ordinary things, the way the wind moves through the trees, the sound of rain against the window, the rise and fall of your own breath. Each moment becomes a part of the dance, a spontaneous unfolding of something too vast to control. It's strange how much of our suffering comes from the simple inability to relax into what is. We fight against change, against loss, against uncertainty, as though life was supposed to remain constant. Yet, the river does not resist its flow. It bends and turns effortlessly, never asking where it's going. You too are a current in that same river. The more you resist, the more exhausted you become. But when you surrender, when you allow the rhythm to guide you instead of trying to dictate it, life starts to feel lighter. There's a grace that arises, a sense of ease that comes from no longer needing to force things to happen. To live as if life is a dance is to recognize that there is no final destination. There is no finish line to cross, no grand completion waiting for you. The joy is in the movement itself, in the turning, the swaying, the falling and rising again. Every mistake becomes part of the choreography. Every loss, every detour, every unexpected turn is part of the music you were meant to experience. And once you see this, you stop trying to make sense of life, and you start to move with it, free, effortless, and beautifully alive. When you finally allow yourself to rest, something within you begins to heal. Not the kind of rest that comes from a few hours of sleep, but the deeper rest that happens when you stop striving to become someone, stop trying to meet the endless demands of the world, and simply allow yourself to be. For so long, you've been living as though life were a race, rushing from one moment to the next, carrying the weight of expectations that were never truly yours. But when you stop, when you give yourself permission to just breathe without needing to be anywhere else, a quiet transformation begins. It's as if the soul, long ignored, finally exhales. In that stillness, you begin to rediscover what has always been present beneath all the noise. You remember that before you were a name, a role, or a story, you were something vast and formless. A simple awareness watching the play of life unfold. This is the self that doesn't age, doesn't fear, doesn't strive. It's the same presence that watched over your childhood dreams and your darkest nights. The same awareness that has quietly remained while everything else has changed. When you rest in this space, even for a moment, the weight you've been carrying starts to dissolve, and you realize that you were never meant to hold so much. The mind has spent years convincing you that peace lies somewhere in the future, in success, in love, in spiritual attainment. But peace doesn't arrive as a reward for doing enough. It emerges the moment you stop doing. When you stop trying to prove, to perfect, to fix, you discover that there was nothing broken in the first place. You were never behind, never incomplete, never unworthy. You were simply lost in a dream of effort, chasing reflections of what you already are. True rest is not laziness or escape. It's an act of remembrance. It's the moment you realize that life doesn't need your constant control to unfold beautifully. The trees don't push themselves to grow. The stars don't strive to shine. They simply are, and in their being, they fulfill their purpose effortlessly. You, too, are part of that same rhythm, a living expression of something far greater than thought. When you relax into that understanding, even for a breath, the tension in your body eases, and your heart opens again to the simple joy of being alive. In rest, clarity returns. You begin to see that everything you sought, love, peace, fulfillment, was never somewhere else waiting to be earned. It was always here, quietly shining beneath the layers of noise and exhaustion. When the mind stops running, the heart remembers its natural rhythm. You no longer need to chase anything because you see that what you were seeking was the one who was doing the seeking. And in that realization, the search ends and you awaken. Not as someone new, but as the one who was never asleep.